The lottery by Shirley J. The morning of June 27th began like any other day in the small town where the lottery was held. People went about their business with a sense of anticipation and excitement that hung in the air. The children gathered stones, and the adults talked in hushed tones about what the day might bring. Everyone knew what was going to happen, but no one dared to question it. As the day wore on, the villagers began to gather in the town square. Mr. Summers, the head of the town's business, arrived with a black box, and the crowd fell silent. He placed the box on a stool in the center of the square and began to call out the names of the families, one by one. As each family was called, a representative stepped forward to draw a slip of paper from the box. The crowd watched with bated breath as each slip of paper was unfolded. There were sighs of relief and murmurs of disappointment as the people learned whether or not their family had been chosen. Finally, it was time for the Hutchinsons to draw. Bill Hutchinson, Tessie's husband, stepped forward and drew a slip of paper from the box. He opened it and showed it to the crowd. It was blank. There was a collective sigh of relief from the other families. It seemed that the Hutchinsons had escaped the lottery this year. But then Tessie stepped forward, waving her arms and yelling, "You didn't give him time enough to take any paper he wanted. I saw you." It wasn't fair. The crowd fell silent, and Mr. Summers asked if there were any other slips of paper left in the box. There was one, and it belonged to Tessie. The crowd watched as Tessie walked to the center of the square. Her face was flushed, and her eyes were wild with fear. The villagers, armed with the stones they had gathered earlier, began to close in on her. Tessie screamed, "It isn't fair, it isn't right." But no one listened. The stones began to rain down on her, and she fell to the ground. The villagers continued to throw stones until she was dead. The crowd began to disperse, and the black box was placed back on the stool. Mr. Summers shook hands with a few of the men, and they all went back to their homes. But something had changed. There was a sense of unease among the people. No one spoke of what had happened, but they all knew that something had gone terribly wrong. As the days passed, the people of the town went about their business as usual, but there was a sense of guilt and shame that hung over the community. They knew that what they had done was wrong, but they didn't know how to make it right. 1 year later, on the morning of June 27th, a small group of people gathered in the town square. They carried signs that read, "Stop the lottery," and "No more violence." The rest of the town ignored them, but they knew that they had to do something to stop the madness. The group grew larger with each passing year. They held rallies and protests, and they began to speak out against the lottery. Finally, after years of struggle, they were able to convince the town council to abolish the lottery. The town was never the same after that. The people had been traumatized by what had happened, and many of them left the town. But for those who stayed, there was a sense of hope. They had finally broken free from the cycle of violence and tradition that had bound them for so long. The years that followed were a time of healing and rebuilding for the town. The people worked to come to terms with what had happened and to make amends for their past mistakes. They set up a fund to support the families of those who had been lost in the lottery and held ceremonies to honor their memory. As the years went by, the town began to attract new residents, people who were looking for a fresh start, free from the weight of tradition and violence, were drawn to the town's newfound sense of community and hope. And as the town grew, it became a beacon of light and inspiration for other communities struggling with similar issues. The story of the lottery became a cautionary tale, taught in schools and studied by scholars. It served as a reminder of the dangers of blindly following tradition and the importance of questioning the status quo. And yet, despite all the progress that had been made, there were still those who longed for the days of the lottery. They felt that the town had lost something essential when it abolished the tradition, and they yearned for the sense of community and purpose that it had provided. But for the majority of the town's residents, the memory of the lottery remained a painful reminder of the dangers of unchecked tradition and the need for vigilance against the forces of violence and oppression. So, with the support of the town council and many of the younger residents, the festival was held. It was a joyous occasion, filled with music, dance, and laughter. People came from all over the region to take part in the celebration, to show their support for the town and its people. For Sarah, the festival was a powerful reminder of how far the town had come. She looked out at the crowds of people, young and old, from all walks of life, and felt a sense of pride and gratitude. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be setbacks and challenges along the way. But she also knew that the town was strong enough to overcome them, as long as its people continued to work together and to believe in a better future. As the festival drew to a close, Sarah took the stage to address the crowd. She spoke of the town's past, of the pain and suffering that had been inflicted on its people, but she also spoke of its present and its future, of the resilience and hope that had emerged from the darkness. And as she finished her speech, Sarah looked out at the sea of faces in front of her and felt a sense of peace. For the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful about the future, about the endless possibilities that lay ahead for the town and its people.